I woke up from emergency surgery to discover my credit card had been maxed out at Disney World. While I was fighting for my life, my son was buying Mickey Mouse ears for his spoiled children. Hello everyone, my name is Brenda Collins and I'm 72 years old. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or state in the comments. I truly enjoy connecting with all of you. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. I've always been the kind of mother who put her child first. After my husband passed away 15 years ago, I poured everything I had into raising my son, Daniel. I worked 2 jobs to put him through college, helped pay for his wedding, and even gave him the down payment for his first house. When his twins were born, I was there every single day, babysitting, cooking meals, helping however I could. Daniel married a woman named Vanessa. From the very beginning, I could tell she saw me less as family and more as a convenient ATM machine. But I stayed quiet because I loved my son and I wanted to remain part of my grandchildren's lives. Ethan and Lily were 8 years old. Sweet children, yes, but Vanessa was raising them to believe the world owed them everything. I lived comfortably on my late husband's pension and Social Security. Nothing extravagant, but I had savings. I'd spent my entire life being careful with money, planning for retirement, emergencies, and maybe leaving something behind for Daniel and the kids someday. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in March. I'd been dealing with stomach pain for weeks, but I'm old-fashioned. I kept telling myself it would pass. That morning, though, the pain became unbearable. I could barely stand upright. I called Daniel, gasping through the pain. "Daniel, I need help." "Mom, I'm at work," he replied impatiently. "Can't you just call an ambulance?" Those words should have been my first warning, so I called an ambulance. At the emergency room, they rushed me through tests. I knew something was wrong the second I saw the doctor's face. "Mrs. Collins, your appendix is severely inflamed and close to rupturing. You need emergency surgery immediately. If it bursts, you could go septic." I was terrified. I'd never even had minor surgery before. Everything moved quickly after that. Nurses asked about insurance, emergency contacts, medications. I gave them Daniel's number. He arrived an hour later with Vanessa. She looked irritated, as though my near-death emergency had interrupted her day. "How long will the surgery take?" she asked the doctor. Not "is she okay?" Not "will she survive?" Just how long the inconvenience would last. "We're taking her in right away," the doctor explained. "The surgery itself should take about an hour, but recovery and observation will take longer. She'll remain overnight." Vanessa leaned over and whispered something into Daniel's ear. He nodded. "Mom," Daniel said, squeezing my hand, "we'll be here when you wake up. Everything's going to be okay." I held onto those words while they wheeled me into the operating room. My son would be there. I wasn't alone. What I didn't know was that the moment I went under anesthesia, they were already planning a vacation. The surgery went well, according to the doctors, but nothing that followed would ever be okay again. I woke up around 6 that evening in recovery, groggy and aching. My abdomen burned like fire and the pain medication made everything feel distant and surreal. The nurses were kind. One of them adjusted my blanket and checked my IV. "Is my son here?" I asked weakly. She stepped out to check the waiting room, then returned with a sympathetic expression. "There's nobody out there for you, honey. Would you like me to call someone?" My heart sank. They had left. Daniel had promised he'd be there when I woke up, and he had left me alone. I called his phone, straight to voicemail. I called Vanessa, voicemail again. "They probably just stepped out for dinner," I told myself, trying desperately to stay calm, but they never came back that night. I spent my first night after surgery alone in a hospital room, drifting in and out of sleep, jumping every time footsteps passed my door, hoping it was Daniel. It never was. The next morning, another nurse came in to check my vitals. "Any family visiting today?" "I'm sure they will," I answered, though my confidence was fading fast. I called again, no answer. I sent text messages, nothing. By afternoon, panic started settling into my chest. Had something happened to them? An accident? But surely someone would have told me. Later that day, the doctor came in for rounds. "You're recovering nicely, Mrs. Collins. We'll keep you one more night for observation. If everything looks good tomorrow, you can go home." Then he asked gently, "Is there someone who can stay with you afterward? You really shouldn't be alone." "My son will help me," I said automatically, but even as I spoke the words, doubt crept into my mind. That second night was worse than the first. The fear had turned into hurt, then confusion, then anger. Where was my son, the boy I sacrificed everything for, the boy who promised he'd be there? On Thursday morning, I was discharged. I still hadn't heard a single word from Daniel, not one call, not one text, nothing. I took a cab home, every bump in the road sending sharp pain through my stomach. The ride cost $42 I really couldn't spare. My house felt cold and empty when I walked inside. I stood in the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals for Daniel over the years, where I'd baked birthday cakes for Ethan and Lily, where every Christmas and Thanksgiving had been celebrated. Then I tried calling him one last time. Voicemail? That's when I decided to check my bank account online. Maybe there was an explanation, maybe I was overreacting. I logged in and stared at the screen. My checking account, which had over $6,000 just days earlier, now had barely $300 left. My emergency credit card, one I had carefully maintained for years, was completely maxed out at $15,000. My hands started trembling as I opened the transaction history. Every charge came from Disney World in Orlando, Florida, March 25th, Walt Disney World Resort, $1,884. March 25th, Disney Park tickets, $2,340. March 25th, Disney Gift Shop, $486. March 26th, Character Dining Experience, $712. March 26th, the Disney Photo Package, $199. March 26th, Souvenir Store, $523. The charges continued for Pages, luxury hotel rooms, VIP tour, expensive restaurants, merchandise. While I was lying in a hospital bed after emergency surgery, they were riding roller coasters and eating Mickey-shaped waffles with my money. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, staring at the screen. Something inside me finally snapped. Not tears, not heartbreak, something deeper. Years of sacrifice, years of being used. Years of putting everyone else first while convincing myself it was love. I checked my email history and found the answer immediately. Months earlier, Daniel had asked to use my credit card online because his wasn't working during Lily's birthday shopping. I trusted him. He never deleted the information. The moment I became vulnerable, he used it. I picked up the phone and called the credit card company. "I need to report fraudulent charges." The representative listened carefully while I explained. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Collins," she said kindly. "However, since this person previously had authorized access to your card, the investigation may be more complicated." "I understand," I replied coldly. "Freeze the card immediately." "Done. The card has been deactivated." Next, I called my bank. "I need to close my checking account and open a new one today." Within 20 minutes, my old account was shut down and replaced. Every automatic payment had to be rerouted, but I didn't care. I wanted them completely cut off. Then I checked the hotel charges more carefully. They were booked through Sunday, 4 more days at Disney. I leaned back in my chair, my surgical incision throbbing painfully, and for the first time in days, I smiled. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. That afternoon, I started documenting everything. Every check I'd written Daniel over the years: $30,000 for his house down payment, $8,000 for a replacement car, $15,000 more in temporary loans that were never repaid. Then I started calculating the years of free childcare. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, every weekend date night, every school holiday. If I'd charged even minimum wage for babysitting Ethan and Lily, they would have owed me over $40,000. I wasn't documenting it to demand repayment. I needed to see the truth in black and white. I needed proof that my generosity had become exploitation. At 7 that evening, my phone finally rang. Daniel. I stared at the screen before answering. "Hello, Mom, finally, I've been trying to reach you." His voice sounded cheerful, carefree, like nothing was wrong. "Really?" I asked quietly. "Because I've been trying to reach you since Tuesday." "Yeah, sorry about that. We decided last minute to take the kids to Disney. Reception's been terrible down here. Anyway, how'd the surgery go?" "How'd the surgery go?" Like I'd gone in for a routine dental cleaning. "I nearly died, Daniel." "Oh, come on, Mom. The doctor said you'd be fine." I closed my eyes. "So you went to Disney World." "The timing just worked out," he said casually. The kids are having the best time. Ethan met Spider-Man today and Lily had breakfast with princesses. It's magical. I said nothing. Listen, he continued, we'll visit when we get back Sunday, okay? We'll bring you something from Disney. Then he hung up. I sat there holding the phone in complete silence, and suddenly I understood something important. They still didn't know the cards had been shut off. They were still spending, still relaxing, still enjoying themselves. Friday morning was going to be very interesting. I slept better that night than I had in months. Friday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. The first message came at 8:47 a.m. Mom, my card isn't working. Call me ASAP. Then, we're trying to pay for breakfast and the card got declined. Then, this is urgent. Vanessa texted next. Barbara, this situation is unacceptable. Call the bank immediately. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat calmly at my kitchen table while my phone continued vibrating. Finally, I answered. Mom, thank God, Daniel blurted out. What happened to the credit card? I canceled it. Silence, then outrage. You what? I canceled the credit card. I also closed my checking account. Are you crazy? He shouted. We're stuck here. We still have hotel charges, park reservations, dinner plans. That sounds like your problem. Mom, stop playing games. You left me alone during emergency surgery while stealing $15,000 from me. We weren't stealing. We were going to pay you back, like you paid back the house money or the car or any of the other money I gave you. In the background, I could hear Vanessa yelling. Mom, please, Daniel said desperately. We have the kids here. You should have thought about that before abandoning your mother in a hospital. How are we supposed to get home? I don't know, Daniel. Figure it out. Emma's crying, he whispered. I took a deep breath. Then tell Emma that Grandma spent 2 nights alone in a hospital because her parents thought Disney World mattered more. You're being selfish? And with that, I hung up. My hands shook afterward, not from fear, but from adrenaline. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. They called 19 more times that day. I ignored every single one. Saturday morning, I called my attorney, Richard Hale. He had handled my husband's estate years earlier. I need to change my will, I told him, completely. Richard invited me into his office that afternoon. Brenda, he said gently after noticing how carefully I sat down, what happened? I handed him the bank statements, credit card records, and printed notes documenting years of financial support I'd given Daniel. As he read, his expression darkened. I want my son removed from everything, I said firmly. The house, savings, investments, everything. Richard looked up slowly. Do you have alternative beneficiaries in mind? Yes. Split everything equally between 3 charities: the Children's Hospital, the Women's Shelter, and the local animal rescue. He nodded thoughtfully. I can draft it today. We'll finalize Monday. I want it signed today. He studied my face carefully, realizing I wasn't speaking from temporary anger. All right, he said quietly. Give me 3 hours. While he prepared the documents, I went home and packed every item belonging to Daniel's family. Toys Ethan and Lily kept at my house. Family photographs, spare clothes, art supplies, everything went into boxes. Then I removed Daniel's spare key from my keychain. On Monday, I'd change the locks. By 4 o'clock, I was back at Richard's office signing the new will, legally binding, irrevocable. Brenda, Richard said softly after the witnesses signed, I understand why you're hurt, but are you certain you don't want a little more time to think about this? I looked directly into his eyes. This isn't about hurt feelings. My son abandoned me during emergency surgery, stole from me while I was unconscious, and treated my life like an inconvenience. That's not a misunderstanding, that's cruelty. Richard nodded slowly. Then I believe you understand exactly what you're doing. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Meanwhile, Daniel and Vanessa were apparently discovering that Disney vacations become very stressful when the money disappears. The voicemails shifted from angry to desperate. Apparently, they'd been forced to leave the Disney resort and move to a cheap motel. Vanessa's parents eventually wired them enough gas money to drive home. Sunday evening, Daniel texted me. We'll be home tomorrow, we need to talk. I replied with a single message. There's nothing to discuss, do not come to my house. Then I blocked both their numbers. Monday morning I hired a locksmith. Just the front and back locks, I told him. While he worked, I called my doctor for a follow-up appointment, then phoned my neighbor Carol, who'd been worried sick about me. Finally, I called my younger sister in Nevada and told her everything. "Brenda," she said after a long silence, "I'm proud of you. Proud? You finally stopped letting him use you. Was I wrong? Wrong. He stole from you while you were in surgery. There's no universe where you're the villain here." By noon, my house had brand new locks. Only 2 keys existed now, one for me, one for Carol in case of emergencies. At 2:30 that afternoon, someone started pounding on my front door. I looked through the peephole. Daniel, Vanessa, Ethan, and Lily, they looked exhausted, angry I didn't open the door. "Mom," Daniel shouted. "Open the door." I stayed silent. "Barbara," Vanessa yelled, "we know you're in there." Then I heard Lily's small voice. "Grandma, are you mad at us?" That almost shattered me, almost. But then I remembered sitting alone in a hospital bed wondering whether I might die while they rode amusement park rides. "Mom, please," Daniel pleaded. "The kids are tired." We drove 7 hours. I walked quietly into my bedroom and closed the door. They remained outside for nearly 40 minutes. I could hear Daniel and Vanessa arguing. Vanessa blamed him. Daniel insisted I'd come to my senses. Finally, they left. 10 minutes later, I heard someone trying the old key in my front lock. The metal rattled uselessly. "She changed the locks," Daniel muttered in disbelief. "This is elder abuse," Vanessa snapped loudly, clearly hoping I'd hear. "She's not thinking clearly after surgery." "Let's just go," Daniel said weakly. I sat silently inside my bedroom and realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore, I was free. Over the next several weeks, they tried everything. Emails, letters, mutual friends calling to mediate. One afternoon, Daniel's longtime friend Mark called me. "Brenda, I know you're upset, but Daniel's really struggling." I interrupted him calmly. "Mark, if your mother were in emergency surgery, would you abandon her in the hospital and fly to Disney World using her credit card?" Silence. Exactly. 3 weeks later, I started rebuilding my life. First, I joined a senior water aerobics group at the community center. The women there were warm, funny, and refreshingly unconcerned with my family drama. Second, I began volunteering at the local library reading program. I still loved children deeply. Just because my own grandchildren had become distant didn't mean I couldn't share kindness elsewhere. Every Tuesday afternoon, I read stories to preschoolers whose eyes lit up with wonder. For the first time in years, I felt appreciated instead of used. Third, I met with a financial advisor named Patricia Reynolds. She reviewed my finances carefully. "Mrs. Collins," she said bluntly, "over the last 15 years, you've given your son approximately $97,000. I winced. If that money had been invested conservatively, it would likely be worth over $160,000 today. The number made me feel physically sick, but then she smiled gently. "The good news is you're still financially stable. Your house is paid off, your pension is secure, and the fraud investigation should reimburse most of the Disney charges. Most, probably all but a few thousand. Manageable, painful, but manageable. And for the first time in a long while, my future belonged to me." Over the next month, Daniel's messages changed tone completely. The anger disappeared. Now he sounded pitiful. "Mom, Lily asks about you every day. Ethan's birthday is next week. He really wants Grandma there. Vanessa is pregnant again. Don't you want to know your new grandchild?" Every message was carefully designed to trigger guilt. And for a while it worked. Some nights I'd stare at old family photos and wonder if I was being too harsh. Then I'd remember waking up alone in that hospital room. I'd remember hearing, "Don't be dramatic, Mom," and the guilt would disappear. One evening, my neighbor Carol asked quietly, "Do you miss them?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I miss who I believed they were," I admitted. "I miss the son I thought I raised, but the man who abandoned me during surgery, I don't know that person. And the grandkids?" That question hurt the most. "I love Ethan and Lily," I whispered. "But their parents are teaching them that love means giving money and free labor. That's not love, that's entitlement." Carol squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than you realize." Maybe she was right. Or maybe I'd finally grown tired of being weak enough to tolerate mistreatment. 4 months after the surgery, my doorbell rang one Tuesday afternoon. Through the peephole, I saw Daniel standing there alone. No Vanessa, no children. He looked awful, thin, exhausted, defeated. Against my better judgment, I opened the door but kept the chain latched. "What do you want?" His eyes filled immediately. "Vanessa left me." I said nothing. "She filed for divorce," he continued quietly. "Said I'm useless, said my family is toxic." Still, I stayed silent. "She took the kids to her parents' house. I haven't seen them in weeks." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied carefully. Then his expression hardened slightly. "You started all of this." And there it was, the victim mentality. "I started this," I asked calmly. "You abandoned me during emergency surgery and stole from me." "It wasn't stealing. You're my mother, you've always helped me." "Helping is when someone gives willingly, stealing is taking without permission." He looked down at the porch floor. "I made a mistake. How long are you going to punish me?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Daniel, you still don't understand." "What? You've never apologized." "I just said no," I interrupted. "You complained, you defended yourself, you blamed me. But you've never once said, 'Mom, I'm sorry I hurt you.'" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Do you even know how my surgery recovery went?" I asked softly. "Did you ever wonder if I was okay?" His silence answered for him. "You called me once from Disney to describe how magical the vacation was. That was the only conversation we had after I nearly died." He swallowed hard. How are you now?" That question should have come months earlier, but at least it finally came. "I'm better than I've been in years," I answered honestly. "I have friends, hobbies. A life that doesn't revolve around rescuing you, so that's it," he whispered. "You're done with me." I changed my will. His face went pale. "What? Everything goes to charity now. The house, savings, investments, all of it." "You can't do that." "I already did." He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. "That's why you came here, isn't it?" I asked quietly. "Because you needed something again." "That's not true." "Then why didn't you come sooner to ask how I was healing?" He had no answer. "Goodbye, Daniel." I closed the door gently. On the other side, I heard him crying. I didn't reopen it. 6 months after the Disney incident, I was having lunch with Carol and 2 women from my water aerobics group when I spotted them across the restaurant. Daniel, Vanessa, Ethan, and Lily. They saw me too. Vanessa immediately whispered something sharply into Daniel's ear. He hesitated, then slowly approached my table. "Mom, Daniel." My friends fell silent. "Could we talk privately?" I considered refusing. But something about him looked different, smaller somehow. "You have 2 minutes." We stepped outside. His hands trembled slightly. "I'm in therapy," he said immediately. "Twice a week." I folded my arms but listened. "My therapist helped me realize how badly I treated you, not just the Disney trip, everything, the money, the manipulation, the entitlement." For once, there were no excuses, no blaming Vanessa, no blaming stress, just honesty. "I abused your generosity," he whispered, "and I'm ashamed of it." I stayed quiet. "I let Vanessa treat you like an ATM. I let the kids grow up thinking your love was automatic no matter how badly we behaved." His eyes filled with tears. "I abandoned you when you needed me most. I'm so sorry." For the first time in months, I saw traces of the son I once knew, not the selfish man he'd become, the boy I raised. "Vanessa and I are in marriage counseling," Daniel continued quietly. "I don't know if we'll stay together, but I'm trying to change. I want to be a better father and maybe someday a better son." I studied his face carefully. There was no arrogance left, no entitlement, just exhaustion and regret. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I admitted. "I understand, and trust isn't rebuilt with words." "I know." He looked down at his hands before speaking again. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking to move back into your life overnight. I just wanted to tell you the truth for once." The silence between us felt heavy. Inside the restaurant, I could see Ethan laughing at something Lily had drawn on the paper table mat. Vanessa looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact through the window. Finally, I sighed. "I need more time." Daniel nodded immediately. "I'll wait." There was something sincere about the way he said it. No manipulation, no guilt, just acceptance. That conversation happened 8 months ago. Since then, Daniel and I have met for coffee 4 times, always short visits. Always in public places, slowly rebuilding something fragile, something cautious. He's repaid $3,000 so far, the most he can currently afford, and he continues attending therapy every week. I haven't changed my will back. And honestly, I probably never will. That money will help children in hospitals, women escaping abuse, and abandoned animals who actually need it. I'm at peace with that decision. But I've also learned something important through all of this. Forgiveness does not require forgetting, and love does not require surrendering your boundaries. For most of my life, I believed being a good mother meant endless sacrifice. I thought love meant always saying yes, always rescuing, always giving, but real love without boundaries becomes permission for abuse. The surgery scar across my abdomen healed months ago. The scar inside my heart took much longer. Some days it still aches, especially around holidays, especially when I see grandmothers shopping with grandchildren or hear little kids laughing in grocery store aisles, but healing is happening. Slowly, honestly, for the first time in my 73 years, I wake up each morning asking myself a question I never used to ask. What do I want today? Sometimes the answer is simple. Coffee with Carol, water aerobics. Reading books to preschoolers at the library, quiet evenings gardening in my backyard. Sometimes healing looks very ordinary, and sometimes that's enough. Last Christmas, Daniel asked if he could bring Ethan and Lily to visit for an hour. I almost refused, but after thinking about it carefully, I agreed with conditions. No Vanessa, no discussions about money, no guilt trips, and if anyone disrespected me, the visit ended immediately. They arrived carrying homemade cookies, not store-bought, homemade. Lily handed me a small Christmas ornament she'd painted herself. It said, "Grandma's house." I nearly cried. Ethan looked taller than I remembered, older, more thoughtful. At one point, he quietly asked, "Grandma, were you really sick when Dad took us to Disney?" Daniel immediately looked ashamed. "Yes," I answered honestly. Ethan stared at the floor. "Dad told us you were okay." "I know." Then something surprising happened. Daniel spoke before I could. "I lied to you," he admitted to his son, "and what I did to Grandma was wrong." The room went silent. Children notice more than adults realize. Ethan nodded slowly. Lily hugged me tightly before they left. "Can we come back sometime?" she whispered. "Maybe," I answered gently, and for once maybe actually meant maybe. Not automatic forgiveness, not surrender, a possibility. After they left, Carol called to check on me. "How'd it go?" I smiled softly while washing cookie plates in the sink. "Better than I expected." "You think people can really change?" I thought about Daniel sitting at my kitchen table admitting the truth to his children, about therapy, about accountability, about the years it might take to rebuild trust. Then I answered honestly, I think people can change if losing everything finally forces them to see themselves clearly. And did it? For the first time in his life, I said quietly, I think my son finally understands consequences. That night, I sat alone on my back porch wrapped in a blanket, listening to the winter wind move through the trees. And I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore, not truly. Hurt? Yes. Cautious? Absolutely. But anger had finally loosened its grip on me because anger keeps you tied to the people who wounded you. Boundaries set you free. I spent decades believing my worth came from what I could give others. Money, time, sacrifice, caretaking. Now I understand something different. My worth was never supposed to be measured by how much pain I could endure for someone else. It was supposed to come from valuing myself too. That lesson came late in life, but not too late. If there's one thing I hope people take away from my story, it's this: love should never cost you your dignity. And being family does not give someone permission to exploit your kindness. Sometimes the hardest thing a parent can do is stop rescuing the child they created. But sometimes it's the only thing that saves both people. Today, my relationship with Daniel remains careful, measured, protected by boundaries that didn't exist before. He calls before visiting, he never asks for money, and every now and then, usually awkwardly, he asks, "How are you really doing, Mom?" It's such a small question, but after everything that happened, it means more than he'll probably ever understand. A few weeks ago, I celebrated my 73rd birthday. Not with a giant family gathering, not with expensive gifts, just a quiet dinner surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. Carol came, my sister flew in from Nevada. 2 women from water aerobics brought flowers and a ridiculous cake shaped like a flamingo. And halfway through dinner, Daniel arrived with Ethan and Lily. He stood awkwardly near the restaurant entrance holding a small gift bag. I didn't know if you'd want us here, he admitted. I looked at the children first. Lily smiled shyly. Ethan gave me a small wave, then I looked at my son. You can stay for cake, I said. Relief flooded his face so quickly it almost hurt to see. During dinner, I watched him carefully, not the way a mother admires her child, the way someone studies whether a broken bridge can safely hold weight again. He listened more than he spoke. He helped Lily cut her food without being asked. When Ethan accidentally spilled his drink, Daniel cleaned it up calmly instead of snapping in frustration. Small things, but small things reveal character. At one point, Carol leaned toward me and whispered, "He's different." "Yes," I said quietly, "he is." That doesn't erase what happened, it never will. Some betrayals permanently change the shape of a relationship. Before Disney, I trusted my son completely. Blindly. Now trust must be earned one action at a time, and maybe that's healthier. Near the end of dinner, Daniel handed me the gift bag. Inside was a framed photograph, not of Disney. Not of the kids, it was an old picture of me and my husband dancing in our kitchen decades ago, one of my favorite memories. "I found it in a storage box," Daniel said softly. "I thought you should have it." For a moment, I couldn't speak, because that gift told me something important. For the first time in years, he'd thought about what mattered to me instead of what he wanted from me. That was new. After dinner, Ethan hugged me goodbye, Lily kissed my cheek, and Daniel lingered near the car before finally saying, "Thank you for giving me another chance, even if I don't deserve it yet." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I answered honestly, "This isn't a second chance, Daniel, it's a new relationship. The old one is gone." He nodded slowly. "I understand." And I think he truly did. When I got home that evening, I placed the framed photo on my fireplace mantel, right in the center, not because everything was magically fixed, not because the pain disappeared, but because healing doesn't always mean restoring things to the way they were. Sometimes healing means building something entirely different from the ruins, stronger, wiser, protected. I still volunteer at the library every Tuesday. I still attend water aerobics twice a week. I still drink expensive coffee now without saving it only for special occasions, because I finally understand that being alive is the special occasion. Emergency surgery taught me how quickly life can change, but betrayal taught me something even more valuable. You can survive losing the people you thought you needed. And sometimes, surviving that loss helps you finally find yourself. For years, I believed my purpose was taking care of everyone else. Now, at 73 years old, I'm finally learning how to care for myself too, and honestly, it's long overdue. Daniel still calls every Sunday evening. Sometimes we talk for 20 minutes, sometimes only 5. Occasionally there are awkward silences neither of us knows how to fill, but there's honesty now, and honesty is a beginning. Not long ago, he asked me something unexpected. "Mom, why didn't you cut me off years earlier?" The question surprised me. I thought about it carefully before answering. Because mothers spend their whole lives hoping their children will become the people they know they can be. And now I know hope without boundaries becomes self-destruction. He was quiet for a long time after that. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry it took me so long to grow up." "So am I," but I said it gently because despite everything he was finally trying, and trying matters, not more than actions, not more than accountability, but it matters. People often ask whether I regret reporting the charges, changing the locks, or removing Daniel from my will. The answer is no, not for a second, because consequences forced a truth that comfort had allowed him to avoid for decades. Without consequences, he would never have changed, and without boundaries, I never would have healed. If you're listening to my story while dealing with someone who constantly takes from you emotionally, financially, mentally, I want you to hear this clearly. Love is not measured by how much suffering you tolerate. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect yourself, even from family, especially from family. Today, my home feels peaceful again, not empty, peaceful. There's a difference. The kitchen where I once cried over stolen money now smells like cinnamon candles and fresh coffee. The living room once filled with tension now feels calm. And the woman staring back at me in the mirror every morning no longer looks exhausted from carrying everyone else's burdens. She looks free. That's my story, and if you take anything from it, let it be this: kindness without boundaries invites exploitation, but kindness with self-respect, that changes everything.